This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to compare two Android 10.1-inch tablets. We have the venerable Nexus 10 here, and we have the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 10.1. Both of these cost $399. Both had 10.1-inch displays, run the latest version of Android, and we're going to look at them now. So here we have the new kid on the block, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 10.1. That's a whole lot of numbers in that name, isn't it? It's getting a little funny there. And the incumbent, which is the Nexus 10, or Google Nexus 10, which is also made by Samsung. Now, for those of you who follow Nexus devices, you know Google doesn't actually make devices themselves. They have another company work with them in partnership to make a device, and they've used HTC, they use Samsung, they used LG in the past. So Nexus 10 is actually made by Samsung, though it's certainly a lot different from any of the tablets that Samsung sells themselves under their own brand. What did they have in common? They're both $399 for the 16 gig models. They both have 10.1-inch displays. They both run Android. And as of this moment, they both run the latest version of Android 4.2.2. And that gets to one point right away. It's great that the Tab 3 ships with the latest version of Android. Often we see products that are a little bit behind even when they come out of the gate. But it probably won't get updates as quickly. You know how that goes with Android products because they have to do testing, they have to customize TouchWiz and make sure it works with the new versions. And with the Nexus 10, you're just looking at vanilla straight Android here, and it's guaranteed to get updates the quickest. As soon as they're available, you're going to get it as long as the hardware can still support those updates. That is, if it eventually becomes too CPU demanding or something like that, then it would be a no-go. But given how powerful the CPU is inside a Nexus 10, I don't think we have to worry about that in any year or two future, certainly. And that leads to another point. We have just straight Android here, no customizations, bare bones. Now those of you who are enthusiasts will like that, or you want to put your own custom ROMs on there because it's pretty easy to unlock the bootloader, root it, and do whatever you want to the poor thing. Standard controls here for Android 4.2, multi-user support included. That's nice. Some people really do like that. Here we have TouchWiz in all of its glory. We have a couple of preloaded widgets you can see there, customized with a translucent background. A couple of Samsung apps, not as many as we've seen on some of their even more expensive products, like there's no split window mode for running two apps side by side, which is a shame, but several of the other Samsung value-added apps are on board, including all of their programs. You get their music player and their video player in addition to the Google ones, probably because they'd like to sell you some content, to be honest, and even their own application store, their own note-taking application. One thing that is important, though, is Polaris Office is bundled. Right here we got our little folder. Shows you we've got Polaris Office. This can view, edit, and create MS Office documents. So you're going to have to procure your own Office suite for the Nexus 10. Now that's not the end of the world. They tend to sell for around $15 to $25, but it's kind of nice to have it right there, turnkey, built in. Speaking of things that are built in, Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 has a USB host. That means with a USB on-the-go cable plugged into this little micro USB port, converts it to a full size, you can use USB peripherals. That said, it's been a little pickier, a little flakier than some other Android tablets we've seen with that feature. We could use some game controllers, but not others. Usually, all of our game controllers work just fine, the USB-based ones. You can use flash drives, but it really doesn't have the power for hard drives. That's understandable. That's true for a lot of tablets. The Nexus 10 works just fine out of the box with game controllers, keyboards, mice, but not mass storage products. So here I have a little utility on my home screen, Nexus Media Import, and that costs about $2 off the Google Play Store, and that'll let you use external hard drives that provide enough power, flash drives, and all that kind of thing. So it's an extra step, and you got to spend a couple of bucks. So there's one difference. Probably the biggest difference for most people, though, is going to be the display. Yes, they are both 10.1 inches, but very big difference in resolution. Samsung uses their usual PLS display, which is a nice enough display. It's very IPS-like, 1280 by 800 resolution. That's pretty much the same resolution that the first 10-inch Android tablet Motorola Zoom came out with. So it's certainly not hideous looking. The average person's going to walk up to that, say it's very colorful, it's very nice, it has wide viewing angles, but text won't be quite as sharp. Now, the Nexus 10 is crazy high resolution. Really, it was doing that to compete with the iPad with Retina display. 2560 by 1600 resolution there. The highest resolution tablet you're going to find in the land of Android. So, yes, it is sharper. Yes, text is clear. If we look at something like books, which we'll do right now, you should be able to see the difference. Certainly you will in person. So here we have the Nexus 10, and you can see when we zoom in just how sharp and clear that text is. It's beautiful. It's every bit as nice as the iPad with Retina display. The background is also pretty much a pure white, which I tend to like. I don't like a color cast. And these are both bright displays. If I max out the brightness on the Tab 3, it actually will get a little brighter, but it doesn't necessarily mean whiter. So on the Tab 3, you can see, if you look closely, a little, staircasing on the letters. Again, it's not terrible. It's not a bad product by any means, but just doesn't have that razor-sharp clarity. And where that really comes in perhaps even more important is if you're a fan of Zinio magazines or Google Play magazines, where they cram the whole layout of a page, a printed magazine page, onto the screen. Often the fonts are really teeny and you end up having to zoom a lot or switch to text flow mode, and you really don't have to do that in the Nexus 10 because everything is just so darn sharp. In terms of size and weight, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 is thinner by a little bit and lighter by a little bit. Now, the thickness difference is pretty small. It's like 0.31 versus 0.36 inches. Not significant. Though I have to say, it just feels and looks thinner because the Nexus 10 has kind of one of those lovable, ugly designs. It's got the rubbery back. It feels very durable, and you're never going to drop it because it's super duper grippy. But it doesn't really do anything to make it look super thin and elegant, that kind of thing. Now, I actually enjoy it, though, because it is so easy to hold and feels nice. It weighs 1.33 pounds, or 1 1/3 pounds. Now, our Galaxy Tab 3 10.1, so you can see, Samsung knows how to design something to make it look as thin as possible. It just looks pretty nice. It's made of all plastic, it's shiny, it picks up fingerprints, it reflects everything, sure. But 1.12 pounds, a little bit thinner, and the footprint is smaller, in part because Samsung got rid of those front-facing speakers they used on the Tab 2 and on the Nexus 10. So if we put them on top of each other, you can see the difference. It's considerably different. So for those of you who prefer portability, there it is. Now about those speakers, they're on the sides over here, and you can watch our full review to listen to it and hear it in action, but one on each side, so stereo. Good for separation. Also good because when you're holding it, you're not really going to be blocking the speaker, since most of us tend to hold it down here like this. Nexus 10, on the other hand, these little grills right here are your front-facing speakers. That's always the most ideal. If the sound is heading directly out at you, you're going to hear it more directly, more loudly. Also because with their opposing ends, you get pretty good stereo separation, as much as 10 inches can provide that. In terms of volume, they're about equally as loud. I would say the Nexus 10 just sounds a little bit better, probably because the sound is coming directly at you. Now, just so you can hear for yourself, both of these are set at 50% volume. We're going to play the same track. Not super loud. We'll bring it up now. Song that starts quiet. A little bit quieter at 50%. But when we bring it up, it's not bad sounding at all. So there you go. Improvement in design for front-facing sound, but other than that, they're about the same volume and pretty similar in quality. Next difference is in the CPU. Now, this is probably going to be important in the future. We'll see, because the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 10.1 runs on an Intel processor. That's pretty rare in Android land, and honestly, the performance sometimes stutters or lags a little bit, and I have a feeling that's because the operating system and applications really are not so well optimized for that CPU. It is a dual-core 1.6 gigahertz Clover Trail with Intel GMA graphics, and here on the Nexus 10 we have the tried-and-true dual-core 1.7 gigahertz Exynos with Mali graphics. Overall, a very strong performer, better compatibility there, and I really don't ever see any lags or hesitations there, so my preference would be with the Exynos. In terms of creature comforts, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 offers you a couple. The most important is going to be right up here, micro SD card slot, compatible with cards up to 64 gigs. It's nice to be able to expand storage, isn't it? And this is not just for your music, movies, videos, that kind of stuff, because Samsung has done a little hack to Android. Android 4.0 and up does not allow you to put apps on the SD card, but because people have been complaining that Samsung's own software takes up so much internal storage space, for the Galaxy S4 smartphone and now for the Tab 3 line, they have an apps to SD card feature that they built into the device. So you can put your big fat games on there. That's really where it matters the most. For those of you who have a fondness for gaming. Games take up a lot of space, 1 gig, 3.5 gigs, something like that. Much more than something Evernote or an Office suite would take up. That's a good selling point right there. The Nexus, whatever you buy it, is what you got. It's got 16 gigs, or you can buy the 32 gig model for $100 additional. That's all the storage you have, other than if you're using flash drives. The other thing right here is our little IR port. This is for the consumer AV remote. We have both Peel and Samsung Watch on here. Both of those offer TV content discovery, in other words, programming grids and suggestions, and they can also control your home AV gear. It's a pretty cool feature, becoming more and more common. The Nexus 10 is more of a no-frills, purpose-built device, shall we say, so you're not going to get that. In terms of battery life, so far for me, these have run similarly. I get about anywhere from 7 to 9 hours, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a lot of streaming HD video, then I'm going to get shorter battery life. If I'm mostly just perusing websites, working in Office-compatible suites, something like that, it's going to be closer to 9 hours. So similar there. When it comes to cameras, you get a front-facing camera on each that's quite competent, and you get a rear camera. Samsung disappointed us. Only 3.2 megapixel camera on this Galaxy Tab 3 10.1, and it takes truly mediocre photos and 720p video. The 5 megapixel on the Nexus 10 is actually a better camera. It's passable. It's pretty decent. It's not something that's going to replace your awesome Galaxy S4 camera or your HTC One camera necessarily, but it's certainly better. In terms of aesthetics, your Nexus 10 is available in your choice of black or black. For the Galaxy Tab 3 10.1, you can get it in brown, which looks something like black depending on the light, and sometimes like brown if it's a lot brighter, or you can get it in their usual glossy white. Either way, it's going to be highly glossy, kind of slippery. Honestly, what's going to come down to is what features are most important to you. If really high quality display is important to you, the Nexus 10 is going to win. If compatibility and speed are important to you, then I think the Nexus 10 is going to win again. If creature comforts like the AV remote control, having a micro SD card, all of Samsung's little tweaks that sometimes can make this actually a little bit easier and more fun to use and more familiar if you're like a Galaxy S4 user or something like that, a Galaxy S3, then the Samsung fights back. If you want the thinnest and lightest tablet, well, Samsung is going to win on that score too. Personally, for me, I would choose the Nexus 10, but we all have different needs. It's up to you. So that's our Nexus 10 versus Galaxy Tab 3 10.1 comparison Smackdown. Hopefully you'll understand the points of difference now and what you're getting for your money. Either way, you're looking at spending $399 for the 16 gig model. Obviously, one has some strong points over the other. In terms of display and build quality, I'd say we give the win to the Nexus 10. Also, in terms of getting Android updates the soonest. For this guy here, you get the IR remote, control your AV gear at home. You get a micro SD card slot, and it's a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter. Different strokes for different folks. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to read our review of each of these products, watch our video reviews, and don't forget to hit that like button.